California's Judicial Council made the ruling on Monday, and it went into effect immediately, meaning most drivers who get a traffic ticket won't have to pay the violation fine, or technically the bail, before challenging it in court. Joining me with some reasons behind the decision and its impact on San Diego drivers is my guest, legal analyst, attorney Dan Eaton. And Dan, what were some of the reasons that the Judicial Council were kind of saying that for this significant change?
Peggy, this rule was enacted on an expedited or quick basis because there was a concern that there was a certain procedural unfairness to requiring people who have speeding tickets or tickets for having broken lights to pay the full amount of their fine before they even set foot in court. And the reason, of course, they had to set that bail is to secure their appearance in court. But there was a concern that for people who can't afford it, that's not right. If they intend to challenge it, they should be able to delay paying that bail until they actually show up in court and are found guilty of the offense.
And is that typically like a fair trial type of thing, that you have a right to a fair trial without having to, pay up first?
Well, that's the basic concern that there was, is that people were going to, in an Alice in Wonderland kind of way, you have to pay, and if you can't pay, all right, well, you're going to be found guilty. Here, under this new rule, if you do a written promise to appear in court, you don't have to pay the bail before you're actually in court.
And how did it work before, just briefly?
Yeah, how it worked before is that you actually did have to pay the full fine as bail if you wanted to contest the particular infraction. And then you would show up in court, and if you won, if you successfully challenged it, you'd get your money back. This way, if you just sign a written promise and you show up, then if you're found guilty, of course, you'll have to pay the fine, but not before.
Now, is this for everybody, or are there certain exclusions? Can a judge actually say, you're going to have to pay?
There are certain exclusions. There are various provisions in the law of California that actually require you to pay a bail if you choose certain procedures. And I won't get into the specific procedures, but there's another exception under this particular rule that says if the judge has reason to suspect that you're not going to show up at court for the arraignment and the eventual trial, they can make you post bail. But if they do find that, if the judge does find that, gotta say so, and it has to have a reason for making you pay that bail before you contest the infraction.
And I also understand it doesn't apply to people with suspended licenses for not paying previous tickets, or those who have accumulated thousands of dollars worth of fines.
Well, that's right. I mean, if you are a serial scofflaw, or if you've got a really bad record, don't expect this to be a free ticket for you.
A free ticket, I like that. Now, the Western Center on Law and Poverty says nearly 5 million California drivers have lost their license because of inability to pay. The average ticket being, I guess, somewhere around $500 for a traffic ticket. The ACLU has said the former way of paying traffic fines disproportionately affected people of color. So how do you think this new rule might even things out?
Well, in the sense that poor people will actually be able to show up and challenge their tickets. As far as disproportionately affecting African Americans, that really requires you to accept this idea of driving while black and being pulled over unfairly and so on. But the bottom line is that poor people will gain greater access to the courts to challenge infractions.
And then could this new rule actually flood the courts with more people saying, I don't want to pay the fine, I'm going to challenge this?
Peggy, I actually read some of the comments from courts throughout the state about this, and they are concerned about that exact thing, that it is going to flood the courts, that people not having to put any money at stake will simply write a written promise, and therefore everybody is going to challenge their tickets because there's no cost to them for not doing so.
And could the state lose money on this?
Absolutely, and here's why. Because judges and courts are going to have to divert resources to staffing these trials, and people may very well not show up. They'll be found guilty, they'll have to pay, but in the meantime, you are talking about a lot of judicial resources, and those are very expensive. Law enforcement officers having to show up for court for a trial that may never occur, and a potential defendant with no skin in the game not having had to post bail beforehand.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Attorney Dan Eaton, thank you so much.
Sure, thank you.